You know, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's fair to say, for the last few years or so, we had all been wondering when would we see common sense returning? When would we see the truth being an important part of society once more? Because wokeness has certainly made it feel like these were forgotten things. But with Trump now being back in the White House, and he's only been there for what? A few weeks now, we are starting to see the madness that have been going on for the last few years or so starting to reverse, especially within women's sports. Because as most of you will know, Trump signed an amazing executive order banning men from women's and girls' sports. Although when you sit here and think about it, isn't it crazy that this had to be an executive order in the very first place? But it's great to see, nonetheless. But as you would imagine, it didn't go down too well with the A, B, C, D, E, F, G, 1, 2, 3, 4 squared cubed community. And this leads us to one athlete we have spoken about in recent weeks, Sadie Schreiner, because recently they had set records in women's races and seemed to brag about the fact that he was able to go ahead and beat the female competition. Sounds perfectly normal, doesn't it? Yeah. But because of this executive order, things aren't looking too good for this male athlete. I mean, things will be perfectly fine if they just decided to compete in the right category, but that would be too much like common sense, wouldn't it? Anyway, they have made a video not being too happy about the direction all of this is heading in, because they have now been prohibited from competing in the Boston University Valentine Invitational. Oh no! It's such sad news. It really is. As you guys can tell, I am struggling to keep the tears from rolling down my face. After we've got through that one, we'll then be checking out some news surrounding the NCAA, and then potentially taking away awards and records from trans athletes who had won them in women's sports. Can you hear that one? Yep, the meltdown, oh boy. That is coming, but before we get into it all, ladies and gentlemen, as always, if you could, make sure to leave a like rating, as it really helps out the video. If you're new, hit that subscribe button, turn on bell notifications so you never miss a video, and let's get into it. So, Sportskeeda have made an article on this, and they have spoken about Riley Gaines' reaction to this whole story, as you can see with the headline. Riley Gaines reacts as trans athlete Sadie Schreiner expresses dissent on being prohibited from racing at BU's Valentine Invitational. Riley Gaines, a former NCAA swimmer, has often expressed concerns over transgender athletes competing in women's games, as we know. This time she called for measures such as cheek swab tests based on a recent incident with Sadie Schreiner, who is a transgender athlete. In his X video, Schreiner said he was barred from participating in the Boston University Valentine Invitational. He expressed surprise at the decision and highlighted the challenges transgender athletes face in navigating eligibility criteria. Oh my gosh. You know, these tears that keep rolling down my face over this, it's just really hard to deal with. Just compete in the right category. It's really not that hard. So we're just going to get into this video going around of Sadie Schreiner. It's currently on 2 million views on X, which is pretty crazy, but iHeartBikes has posted on X, after bragging for more than a year about being a male athlete in the women's category, Sadie Schreiner is shocked that he was prohibited from racing at BU's Valentine Invitational. I know, it's so shocking, it really is. He says this could happen to any female athlete who doesn't conform to what BU thinks a female athlete is. He brings up a great point. A one-time cheek swab for all female athletes would serve as a passport for entry to the women's category, removing any doubts about eligibility and protecting the female category. That is a good point, but again, it's just crazy that this is the point it's reached, because insanity has been allowed to go on for such a long time. But anyway, let's see what the stunning and brave Sadie Schreiner has to say.
Hi, my name is Sadie Schreiner. I'm a trans athlete that competes in track and field, and today I was supposed to be competing in Boston University's Valentine Invitational. I paid the $120, they put me on the heat sheet, they accepted my entry, and I was perfectly ready to go and drive down to Boston just like I did a year before. Less than 24 hours before I was supposed to step on the track to compete, Boston University sent me this email claiming that the executive order barred me from competing. Despite Massachusetts law, despite their own transgender policy, and despite me being an unattached athlete, they banned me without any investigation or discussion, which means that should any other woman be going to compete at Boston University for any reason, unattached or part of a school, they can simply say to you, we think you were assigned male at birth, and so we're not going to allow you to compete. I want to make this video to document how universities were responding to the recent executive order and show that they're not looking at federal documents, they're not looking at my passport or my birth certificate, they're not even simply calling me before banning me. They are hearing word that I was assigned male at birth, and that is enough for them to ban any athlete they want to.
So let's just pause this for a second here. There's only 20 seconds left of the video anyway, but this male athlete, as stated by many people, has bragged in the past about being a trans athlete in women's sports. So who's in the wrong here? Not the people banning you. And if you just took one look at this video, you would be able to tell they're a trans athlete. I mean, the flag in the background is just a key indicator. They also wear the trans flag on their clothing or whatever, from what I've seen, when they're racing. So you've made it pretty obvious you are a trans athlete. And you know, this athlete could have avoided all of this in the very first place. It really could. And you know, it's a simple solution we've been talking about for such a long time, for many years now. Just compete in the right category. If you're a dude, just compete in the men's category. I know you probably wouldn't do as well and you wouldn't win as much, but just compete in the right one.
They are not going to be the only university who takes such drastic measures, and it sets a really scary precedent for how the future of women athletics are going to work, because if you don't conform to what they think is a female athlete, they're not going to let you compete.
It's such a sad thing for you. It really is. But let's just get into some of the reactions to this video. We have Gunther Eagleman here posting, "Why not compete with men, since you are a man?" Yeah, again would solve this issue. Sadie is not banned from competing. Yes, this is another made-up narrative the mainstream media are going to run with. Oh, trans athletes are banned from competing in sports. We must feel so sorry. No, men are just banned from competing in women's sports. They can still compete in sports. Nobody's banning them from sports altogether. But they go on to say, Sadie is not banned from competing. Sadie can enter the men's race without issue within the rules of competition. If Sadie wanted to test fitness, the opportunity is there to do so to get a time properly. Facts, not feelings please when you mislead your audience, Sadie. And he wasn't even prohibited from competing. He could have entered the men's race. No problem. So yeah, again, they're not even really prohibited from competing in this whole thing. They just have to compete in the right category. Just goes to show it's not actually about competing for these guys. They really don't care about the sport at all. Many have never played sports or been interested in sports until they start pretending to be women, after which they suddenly try any and every sport and join every team they can. And Billy Bragg says, "I wonder why that could be." Yes, we're all wondering why. But moving on from the really emotional story about Sadie Schreiner not being able to compete in the wrong category, the Daily Mail have reported Trump's administration demands NCAA strip trans athletes of women's titles and records. Completely agree. Any male athlete that has won an award or set a record, it should be taken away from them because it's not theirs to begin with. Donald Trump's Department of Education has demanded the NCAA strip transgender athletes from any women's titles or records they won after transitioning, according to an exclusive report from the Daily Caller. In a letter addressed to NCAA President Charlie Baker and the National Federation of State High School Associations Chief Bob Lombardi, the Department of Education's Office of General Counsel claimed to be addressing a matter of urgent importance. "We cannot undo the damage inflicted by years of policies and practices that have denied the material reality of sex and conflated that immutable characteristic with a subjective fluid concept of identity by prospectively returning to objective, factual sex classifications in athletics," the department's attorney wrote in its letter obtained exclusively by the Daily Caller. "But we can recognize the harms done and injustices by misguided policies, and reversing their effects will restore a genuine commitment to girls' and women's equality of opportunity in athletic competitions across the United States." Trump wasted little time delivering on his promise to address the topic following his election. Trump issued an executive order on the day his second term began that called for restoring biological truth to the federal government, and signed another on Wednesday titled "Keeping Men Out of Women's Sports." The NCAA is made up of 1,100 colleges and 530,000 student athletes, of which fewer than 10 are transgender, Baker told a Senate committee recently. I said last time when we spoke about that number is absolute crap. There are more than 10. But even if, there is one male athlete in women's sports, that shouldn't be happening. And I totally agree. Again, the awards and records set by these trans athletes should be taken away. And again, I completely agree with this. Any award or title won by a trans athlete should be taken away from them because they shouldn't have it in the very first place. You should not be competing in the women's category. And the women and girls who have been affected by this insanity deserve that justice. Because, my first thoughts were when this executive order was signed, if you think about all the girls and women who have had those places, awards taken away from them, they aren't going to get those back. It's good for future girls and future women, but what about all the girls in the past? So taking away those records, those awards, those titles would be a good start. But leave your thoughts down below, ladies and gentlemen, on everything discussed in this video. What are your thoughts on Sadie Schreiner being really upset about being prohibited from the women's category at the Boston University Valentine Invitational, and then also the NCAA potentially stripping trans athletes of women's titles and records? Leave your comments down below. But until next time, it has been your host JD. Have a great day, stay safe, and I'm out. Peace.